It's, again, very much an honor to be here with a room full of people who I admire, respect, and with people who I love and people who have been key mentors to me throughout my career and who believed in me well before I got to this point. And so that's incredibly important, and I love and appreciate you for everything. Also honored to be here is the Robert Dahl Fellow, which is, seems kind of, yes, a shock. But I was asked here today to speak on this question of, let's see, in the current environment, this relationship between the social sciences and the policy world, government, civic institutions has unraveled, and how can we regain the trust in the social sciences and in social science evidence. And this loss of trust has prompted a cottage industry of commentary on the need for better communication, for better transparency, and the inclusion of diverse, meaning, I think, conservative viewpoints. These proposals assume that the social sciences can be neutral and that the key challenge is one of persuasion. So just to echo a point that Zav raised earlier. But I want to argue a bit, well, we'll see what you think. I want to argue that the problem of trust is not something that can be solved simply by addressing messaging or speaking to those on the other side of the aisle. And instead, I want to look at two key periods in the development of the social sciences in the United States to argue that trust in the social sciences, particularly if framed as being listened to by those in government and civic organizations, depends on coalitions with the powerful. Neutrality and expertise were the result, I would put those in quotation marks, of a multi-decade campaign by progressives in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the period in which this group was formed, and depended in part, only in part, on public disgust with perceived corruption and a move to insulate the management of government, the civil service, from politics. And the goal was to insulate the management of government really from democracy in many ways, to build a new form of regulation and of regulating both politics and government. And it's in this progressive era from the 1880s to the 1920s that the social sciences were established as academic disciplines. The University of Chicago introduced its sociology department in 1892. The American Journal of Sociology was founded in 1905, along with the Department of Sociology at Columbia University. The first political science department was established at Columbia in the United States in 1880. And most research universities had political science departments by the 1920s. So these social sciences helped promote and build a regulatory framework for government through this period. And what I want to say is, of course, there were strings attached to these partnerships with power. In the progressive era, social policies were undergirded by social Darwinism and eugenics, and excluded groups deemed inferior, including women, Southern Eastern European immigrants, Catholics, Jews, blacks, and progressive pushed for voter registration, literacy tests, poll taxes to mitigate fraud and corruption, but also disenfranchising blacks and immigrants. So there is a partnership with power, but strings attached with this partnership. The second period, following the Second World War, saw a period of substantial federal investment in public and private universities. And in many ways, this period built on and expanded the notions of academic freedom. So you see in the GI Bill, for instance, a statement that no department, agency, or officer of the United States shall exercise any supervision or control whatsoever over any state educational agency. And this is upheld by the Supreme Court. However, much of this investment came about as a result of the post-war competition with the USSR. And the National Defense and Education Act, the NDEA, signed into law by President Eisenhower in 1958, was designed to provide the country with specific defense-oriented personnel, including federal assistance for the study of foreign languages, area studies, and engineering. Again, not without strings attached. Title 10 of the NDEA required recipients to sign an affidavit disclaiming belief in the overthrow of the US government, a requirement that was opposed by some universities which refused to comply, and which was only rescinded in 1962 under the Kennedy administration. So I want to argue that even at these periods that we now look back on as being sort of the high point of cooperation between universities and outside actors, this establishment and flourishing of the social sciences in the progressive and post-war periods were the direct result of coalitions with the powerful, elites, if you were. In this sense, the Trump administration's proposed compact for academic excellence in higher education, again, quote unquote, is not so wildly different. It promised, of course, financial support to the universities who are willing to comply. And if those universities, of course, fell in with a number of prerequisites about, for instance, the need to enforce the Trump administration's ideas about gender identity, to favor the sciences and tuition, and purging programs that the government said included incorrect thinking about political topics, and more. These demands, of course, were rejected by almost all the universities that were approached by the Trump administration. I think that was correct. The cost would have outweighed any possible benefit. But it underlines how the role of universities, and in particular the role of social sciences as purveyors of knowledge, isn't just about truth and objectivity, but about power and about coalitions with the powerful. We have to recognize, too, that any coalition with the powerful comes with strings attached. So the question then is, what conditions and with whom? So do we build alliances with the business community, for instance, who might still value some kind of unbiased information from the social sciences? Do we build alliances with wealthy donors who might still have an attachment to an idea of a university built on the pursuit of knowledge? Do we build some kind of explicit agreement with Congress, as Danielle Allen at Harvard has suggested? Or do we build an alliance among universities and civic actors themselves, which would require a degree of coordination that has not been present thus far? So we have to ask what each of these coalition partners would offer and what strings would be attached and what the potential downsides are. And I think, unfortunately, there really aren't any easy answers here. I think the role, I'm speaking here at this group with this academy, the role of the academies and foundations is, in fact, in convening people and in convening actors across these different sectors with the possibility of building such an alliance of a form of power that retains many of the freedoms of intellectual pursuit that we value, but again, won't come without some kinds of strings attached. And with that, I want to conclude my remarks and thank you once again for the opportunity to be here. Thank you.